The rise and fall of Pablo Escobar. Pablo Emilio Escobar is a name that still sends chills down the spine of many, was one of the most notorious drug lords of the 20th century. Known as the King of Cocaine, Escobar's story is filled with power, violence, and unimaginable wealth. His life and empire were deeply intertwined with the social, economic, and political fabrics of Colombia, and, by extension, the world. Despite his brutal methods, he remains a figure of both fear and fascination. This video explores Escobar's rise to power, his drug empire, his role in Colombian society, and his eventual downfall, shedding light on one of history's most infamous criminals. Early life and ambitions. Pablo Escobar was born on December 1, 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, to a teacher and a farmer. Despite his humble beginnings, Escobar exhibited an ambitious streak from an early age. Growing up in a poor neighborhood, he quickly learned the challenges of financial instability. His ambition to escape poverty and gain influence led him down a dark path. From a young age, Escobar was involved in petty crime, stealing cars, selling contraband, and engaging in minor smuggling operations. As he grew older, these small acts of crime paved the way for his entrance into the world of drug trafficking. In the 1970s, Escobar realized the enormous potential of the cocaine trade. At the time, the United States was experiencing a boom in demand for cocaine, and Escobar saw this as an opportunity. He understood the principles of supply and demand and began establishing contacts with suppliers in Peru and Bolivia. With his natural knack for business, Escobar set out to build what would become the Medellin cartel. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. The birth of the Medellin cartel. Escobar's Medellin cartel became one of the most powerful and feared drug organizations in the world. Escobar's vision was to monopolize the entire process, from production to distribution, allowing him to control the quality and price. In Colombia, he was known for using violent and ruthless tactics to eliminate any competition. Within a few years, the Medellin cartel was producing hundreds of tons of cocaine, with operations spanning from the Andes Mountains to the streets of Miami and New York. By the early 1980s, Escobar's cartel was responsible for an estimated 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the United States. The Medellin cartel's cocaine industry was so vast that Escobar was earning around $420 million a week, making him one of the richest men in the world. However, this wealth came at a high price. Violence and corruption became part of Colombia's daily life. Escobar's wealth was so immense that he was said to have buried large sums of money in fields, houses, and forests around Colombia. He famously spent about $2,500 a month on rubber bands just to bundle his cash. But despite the money, power, and control, Escobar's empire was built on a foundation of violence, threats, and fear. He used bribes, kidnappings, and assassinations to maintain his influence and expand his empire. Escobar's dual role, drug lord and Robin Hood. In Colombia, Escobar wasn't just a drug lord, he was also seen by many as a modern-day Robin Hood. Although his wealth was earned through crime, he spent a significant portion on building schools, hospitals, and housing for the poor. In Medellin, where poverty was rampant, Escobar used his wealth to create a network of support among the lower classes. He constructed entire neighborhoods, providing homes for people who had nowhere else to go. These efforts earned him considerable popularity, with some residents even regarding him as a hero. Escobar's dual role as a criminal and a benefactor allowed him to gain the loyalty of thousands. However, his philanthropy had a dark side. It created a sense of protection and immunity. Many people, grateful for Escobar's contributions, turned a blind eye to his violent and criminal activities. For years, the government struggled to apprehend Escobar because he was shielded by his loyal followers who benefited from his wealth and protection. The height of power and political influence. Escobar's influence went beyond Medellin and seeped into the corridors of Colombian politics. In the early 1980s, he even attempted to enter politics legally. Escobar was elected as an alternate member of the Colombian Congress, where he hoped to leverage his position to influence legislation in favor of his operations. For a short while, it seemed that he might succeed in transitioning from a drug lord to a legitimate political figure. However, this political venture was short-lived. Escobar's criminal background became a public scandal, and he was forced to resign. The Colombian justice minister at the time, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, played a significant role in exposing Escobar's criminal ties. In retaliation, Escobar ordered Lara Bonilla's assassination, marking one of the first high-profile political murders linked to the cartel. This act signaled the beginning of an all-out war between Escobar and the Colombian government. The Plata o Plomo strategy. Escobar's control over the country was bolstered by his infamous Plata o Plomo, silver or lead strategy. This phrase, meaning take the bribe or face the bullet, encapsulated his approach to dealing with opposition. Anyone who resisted his influence, whether they were politicians, judges, or law enforcement officers, was given a simple choice: accept a bribe or face death. This ruthless tactic allowed Escobar to neutralize many of his enemies. Judges were too afraid to convict him, police officers were afraid to pursue him, and politicians avoided any actions that would put them in his crosshairs. This reign of terror made Escobar one of the most feared men in Colombia and allowed him to operate his empire with impunity for years. Escobar and the escalating violence. As Escobar's empire grew, so did the violence. He orchestrated a series of bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings to maintain control and assert dominance. In 1989, Escobar's cartel bombed Avianca Flight 203, killing over 100 people. His target was a Colombian presidential candidate he believed would pursue extradition policies with the United States, but he was willing to sacrifice innocent lives to eliminate his political enemies. Escobar's actions escalated to the point that Colombia seemed on the verge of collapse. Violence became a daily reality, with hundreds of police officers, journalists, and civilians losing their lives in Escobar's ruthless campaign. As his brutality grew, the Colombian government began to receive more support from the United States in combating the Medellin cartel. The U.S. sent troops, intelligence agents, and financial aid to support the war on drugs in Colombia, increasing the pressure on Escobar. The hunt for Escobar. The tide began to turn against Escobar in the early 1990s. The Colombian government, with U.S. support, launched a full-scale operation to capture him. Escobar, realizing that he was cornered, negotiated a deal in 1991 that allowed him to serve a reduced sentence in a custom-built luxury prison known as La Catedral. This prison was more of a mansion than a detention center, equipped with a nightclub, jacuzzi, and waterfall. However, when the government attempted to transfer him to a more conventional prison after realizing he was still running his empire from La Catedral, Escobar escaped. This triggered one of the most intense manhunts in history. The Colombian government, along with a group of vigilantes known as Los Pepes, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar, sought to capture or kill Escobar. Los Pepes, comprised of rival cartel members and people who had suffered from Escobar's violence, targeted Escobar's assets and associates, creating further chaos. After months of relentless pursuit, Escobar's luck finally ran out. On December 2, 1993, Colombian authorities tracked him down to a hideout in Medellin. In a rooftop shootout, Escobar was shot and killed, bringing an end to his reign. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Escobar's legacy. Even in death, Pablo Escobar left an indelible mark on Colombia and the world. His legacy is complex, marked by a strange mixture of infamy and adulation. To some, he remains a symbol of resistance against a corrupt system. To others, he is a cold-blooded killer responsible for the deaths of thousands. The influence of Escobar's life and actions is still evident today. The Medellin cartel has long been dismantled, but the drug trade continues, with different players rising to fill the void left by Escobar. In Medellin, some people still revere him, while others mourn the destruction he brought upon the country. His story is a reminder of the dangers posed by unchecked power, violence, and corruption. Escobar's life encapsulates the destructive allure of wealth and the far-reaching consequences of a single man's ambition to rule a nation through fear. Pablo Escobar's life serves as a cautionary tale about the dark side of power and influence. He climbed from poverty to become one of the most feared and wealthy men in the world, yet his empire ultimately crumbled under the weight of its own brutality. Escobar may have built schools and provided for the poor, but he did so at an unimaginable cost. His story, filled with contradictions, violence, and the quest for control, continues to fascinate people worldwide, serving as a reminder of the perils of living life on the edge of the law. Escobar's story isn't just about one man, it's about the consequences of a world where crime, wealth, and violence collide, leaving a legacy of pain, fear, and enduring fascination. The aftermath of Escobar's death, a nation's recovery and struggle. The death of Pablo Escobar was a relief for many Colombians, but it was also just the beginning of a long journey for Colombia to heal from the scars left by his reign. In the immediate years following his death, the country faced the task of rebuilding a society that had been terrorized, fragmented, and deeply affected by Escobar's violent empire. The Medellin cartel disbanded, but it did not mean an end to Colombia's issues with the drug trade, violence, or corruption. As Colombia sought to rebuild, the void left by the Medellin cartel was quickly filled by new organizations, such as the Cali cartel and various paramilitary groups. These groups took over much of the drug trafficking networks Escobar had established, often bringing their own brand of violence and control. This posed a major challenge for Colombian authorities, as the dismantling of one cartel led to the emergence of multiple decentralized groups. For years after Escobar's death, Colombia continued to fight against new drug cartels and insurgent groups, struggling to contain the influence of drug money on its political, judicial, and economic systems. Escobar's impact on Colombia's economy was also profound. During his heyday, the Medellin cartel contributed a significant amount to Colombia's GDP, though illegally, and the cartel's collapse left a noticeable void. However, the government knew that sustainable economic progress could only come from legitimate industries. Over the next few decades, Colombia invested heavily in other sectors, particularly tourism, coffee, and technology. Medellin itself underwent a major transformation, going from a city synonymous with violence to one known for innovation and urban renewal. This transformation has been both a symbol and a tool for Colombia's journey to redefine itself in the post-Escobar era. Pablo Escobar in popular culture. Despite his brutal methods, Pablo Escobar's life story has captivated the world, particularly in popular culture. Movies, TV shows, books, and documentaries have all explored his life and his impact on Colombia, sometimes with a focus on the gritty reality of his violence, and other times with a romanticized lens that makes him appear as a rebellious anti-hero. Perhaps one of the most popular portrayals is the Netflix series Narcos, which dramatically retells the story of Escobar's rise and fall, mixing historical facts with fictional embellishments to engage audiences worldwide. In popular culture, Escobar is often depicted as a tragic figure, a man from humble beginnings who rose to enormous power but was ultimately destroyed by his own ambition. This portrayal tends to fascinate viewers and readers as it taps into themes of power, wealth, and rebellion against authority. However, the romanticization of Escobar's life has also been controversial. Many Colombians feel that these portrayals overlook the suffering he caused and the countless lives lost during his reign. To Colombians who lived through Escobar's terror, he is not a romantic figure or a misunderstood genius. He is a brutal criminal who nearly destroyed their country. This complex cultural image has also led to narco-tourism in Medellin, where people visit sites associated with Escobar's life and death, from the luxurious houses he once owned to his grave. Narco-tourism has become both a point of fascination and contention, with some Colombians viewing it as a way to educate tourists about their country's history, while others see it as glorifying a painful chapter in Colombia's past. Escobar's impact on global drug policy. Pablo Escobar's reign as the king of cocaine not only affected Colombia, but also had a lasting impact on global drug policy. The Colombian drug trade grew to such an extent that it fundamentally altered how countries around the world approached the war on drugs. Escobar's Medellin cartel showed the world the dangers of allowing a drug empire to grow unchecked, influencing policy in the United States, Latin America, and even Europe. In the 1980s and 1990s, the United States increased its efforts to combat the influx of cocaine. The war on drugs became a central policy agenda in the U.S., leading to stricter drug laws, tougher sentencing for drug-related crimes, and a surge in funding for anti-narcotics operations. U.S. agencies, including the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, became heavily involved in Colombia, working closely with Colombian authorities to bring down the Medellin cartel. While the U.S.-Colombia alliance succeeded in capturing or killing many of Escobar's associates, the broader war on drugs has faced criticism for its focus on punishment over prevention, leading to mass incarceration, particularly in marginalized communities, without significantly reducing drug consumption. In Colombia, the legacy of the drug war continues to influence policy today. The government has adopted strategies focused on strengthening law enforcement, disrupting supply chains, and promoting crop substitution programs for farmers involved in coca production. However, many Colombian farmers, faced with poverty and limited economic opportunities, continue to cultivate coca due to its profitability. The drug trade in Colombia has evolved over the years, with newer, smaller cartels and paramilitary groups continuing to operate, though with a lower profile compared to Escobar's cartel. Escobar's legacy also influenced discussions around alternative drug policies, including decriminalization and legalization. Some countries have re-evaluated their approach, focusing on harm reduction and treatment rather than strict punishment. The debate over whether to legalize drugs like cocaine remains complex, with proponents arguing that legalization would cut off the revenue for cartels, while opponents believe it could lead to increased addiction and health issues. The human cost of Escobar's empire. While stories of Escobar's wealth and power often dominate discussions about his life, the true tragedy of his reign lies in the human cost. Tens of thousands of Colombians lost their lives due to cartel violence, and countless more were impacted by the instability and fear that characterized those years. Escobar's brutal methods, kidnappings, bombings, and assassinations left a profound trauma that Colombia is still working to heal from. Entire communities were displaced as Escobar and rival factions waged war across Colombia, creating a refugee crisis that affected thousands of families. In Medellin, Escobar's home base, entire neighborhoods were transformed by violence. The sicarios, or hitmen, many of whom were young men from poor backgrounds, became a symbol of the city's desperation. For many of these young men, joining the cartel was seen as the only way to escape poverty, even if it meant a life of crime and violence. Escobar's empire fed off the vulnerabilities of Colombia's most impoverished communities, drawing in young men with promises of wealth and power, only to leave them dead or imprisoned. Families of Escobar's victims have worked tirelessly to keep the memory of their loved ones alive, often speaking out against the glorification of Escobar in popular media. They remind the world that behind the stories of wealth and power, there was immense suffering. They are the living reminders of the consequences of his ruthless quest for dominance, advocating for justice and remembrance in the face of Escobar's enduring celebrity. Colombia's path forward. From violence to peace and progress. Colombia has made significant strides since Escobar's death, moving toward peace and recovery. Over the past 2 decades, the Colombian government has focused on improving security, reducing violence, and encouraging foreign investment. International organizations have also played a role, supporting efforts to improve education, healthcare, and social infrastructure in Colombia's rural areas, where the drug trade once thrived. Medellin, once a hub of violence, has become a model for urban transformation. The city has invested in education, public transport, and innovative architecture, creating an environment that fosters growth and opportunity. Social programs aimed at providing young people with alternatives to the drug trade have helped reduce crime rates and provided new paths for Colombia's youth. Today, Medellin is recognized for its urban innovation, with features like its cable car system connecting remote neighborhoods to the city center, reducing isolation, and creating opportunities for residents in formerly marginalized areas. The Colombian government also made historic strides in 2016 by signing a peace agreement with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, the largest guerrilla group in the country, which had been deeply involved in drug trafficking. This peace deal was a crucial step in reducing violence and bringing stability to the country, although challenges remain. Some smaller factions have resisted the agreement, and issues related to drug trafficking and rural poverty persist. Escobar's enduring symbolism. Even decades after his death, Pablo Escobar remains a symbol that evokes strong reactions. For some, he represents the devastating consequences of poverty and the lure of crime as a way out. For others, he is a reminder of the corrupting influence of power and wealth. His story has become part of the global consciousness, representing a cautionary tale about the dark allure of wealth gained through violence. In Colombia, Escobar's legacy is complex. Many Colombians feel a sense of collective shame that one of their own could become a symbol of such destruction, while others see his life as a reminder of the societal challenges that allowed him to rise to power in the first place. Escobar's story speaks to broader themes of inequality, injustice, and the search for identity in a country that has been defined, in part, by the drug trade. The Colombian government and people continue to work toward erasing the shadow he cast over their nation, seeking to replace it with stories of resilience, transformation, and hope. Lessons from Escobar's life and legacy. Pablo Escobar's life is a study in contrasts: wealth and poverty, power and vulnerability, love and ruthlessness. He rose from humble beginnings to become one of the wealthiest men in the world, yet his empire was built on a foundation of crime and terror. His story serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the devastating impact of drug cartels on society. Escobar's life left a deep mark on Colombia and on the world. He exposed the systemic challenges that allowed his empire to thrive, from poverty and corruption to the global demand for drugs. His story reminds us of the human cost of the drug trade, not only for those directly involved, but for entire communities caught in the crossfire. Escobar may have died, but the issues he exploited, inequality, desperation, and the desire for power, are still present in societies around the world. Today, Colombia stands as a testament to resilience. The country has not only survived Escobar's legacy, but has worked to redefine itself as a place of beauty, culture, and hope. The people of Colombia, scarred but strong, continue to move forward, demonstrating that a society can rise from the ashes of violence. The story of Pablo Escobar may be over, but the story of Colombia's recovery, growth, and renewal is still being written. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and join the membership for more exclusive content.